you're not coming up with all these ideas for your website yourself. Your customers are giving you that content, and that just takes so much of the hassle and the stress out of writing your website by just gathering all those little pieces of information.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio today. We have founder, website messaging strategist and conversion copywriter at Alice Writes Copy. Welcome to the show today, Alice Brown.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to this because you cover off so many topics that I'm interested in. I've probably dabbled in myself as I've gone into the world of being self-employed and starting to put some copy and some websites together. And I think I've probably just butchered it absolutely. But I'd love to hear more about what you're doing in that space. But maybe let's start off a little bit with sort of who you are, what's your background, how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm predominantly a conversion copywriter, and basically what that means is writing things that move people to act, move them to trust, but essentially it's an action we want people to be taking, and that might be to download something, buy something, book something. It might even be to click onto another page, but ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to inspire people to take action. And I've been doing this full time for about 5 years.
Okay.
Previous to this, I was in the world of adventure sports.
Okay.
So I worked in surf schools and ski schools for about 12 years. Started when I was about 15, 16, and I did my work experience in a surf school in Cornwall. And I just got so hooked. I was just totally obsessed with it.
Right.
So it was very busy summers, quite quiet winters, that cycle. And I was coaching as well as doing some of the managerial side and the admin. And every single day I was spending time with people who were nervous.
Right.
They were hesitant. Surfing can be potentially a little dangerous. Mm-hmm. So there was reason behind a lot of their fears, but some of it was irrational. Some of it was worried about having to put a wetsuit on, having to be around other people with snot dribbling down their face. So I was really up and close and personal with these obstacles and hesitations that people had. And it was our job as coaches, and also when I was emailing them when they were booking, to help them overcome those obstacles and hesitations and fears, whether they were physical, irrational, emotional, psychological hesitations that they had.
Yep.
So I realized after a while that there were various fears and obstacles that people had that would come up again and again. And it got to a point where I'd finished university and I had a really busy summer and I had absolutely nothing to do in the winter. So I was like, right, how can I make myself more indispensable to these businesses? So I was like, right, okay, I'll start writing blogs, and I think I read like 90% of the blog posts that Neil Patel has written, who, if you don't know him, he's kind of a god in the SEO world.
Okay.
And I started to realize, now I started to pick up this sort of vocabulary of marketing, that a lot of it was about encouraging people to overcome obstacles and hesitations. Right. And it didn't just apply to people who were doing a physical activity, where there was like physical dangerous risk. There was as much risk in someone potentially trusting a coach, like a business coach, right. Or like, should I trust this like trainer brand? Are they going to give me everything that I need? And I have these hesitations about investing in them and trusting in them. So I saw this crossover between the adventure sports world and almost any other business
Right.
where it was about communicating to people that they don't need to be worried, to support them, to make them feel comfortable, and like, if they have questions, it's okay to ask them. And so, yeah, that's what really led me into the world of marketing.
Hmm.
And so that's what I try and do with my clients these days, is look at who they're trying to attract,
Right.
highlight the obstacles and hesitations that they have
Hmm.
before purchase, uh, before following them on Instagram, before, while they're in the free trial period, whatever their business looks like, overcoming those obstacles and hesitations in, well, my job is website, but also encouraging them to overcome them on other mediums, other platforms,
Right.
other forms of communication, so that they've got that steady flow of customers coming to them. There aren't those roadblocks, or if there are those roadblocks, these businesses are encouraging them to, well, their own clients to move past them, push them out the way, and feel confident moving forward, eventually to the point where they're converting.
Right. Oh, it's wonderful. I think I love a good crossover story. I love it when people take lessons from what is seen as a completely left field example and bring it into something completely different. And the other side of it that I really love, you mentioned there about, people's anxieties won't necessarily be about the sport itself. It's the putting on the wetsuit or the snotty nose or whatever it might be. And I think that the experience I've had anyway, on reflection, it's just in this conversation here rather than anything else, is when I've identified those things and I've been open and honest about them to people. Like, I go back to when I was a production manager in a sausage factory, and I would employ new people, and we used to just interview people, and it was more about the job. Can you do the job? Blah blah blah. Are you available? Can you physically do it? Have you got the capacity? And it wasn't until I started having these conversations about, you are aware that it's a cold, kind of smelly, wet environment that you're going to have to be working in. Are you okay with that? And this is how you're going to have to wear some more jumpers, and you're going to have to, I would double sock if I were you. These little things that got people over the things that actually matter, that keep, you can get people through the door, but not necessarily staying in the door. That was the problem we were having there. And I think what you hit on there was really reflective to me in terms of the things that are stopping people from buying your product, clicking the next page, doing the next thing, taking the next action, aren't necessarily to do with your product or your service. It's their anxieties, their hesitations. What are are there sort of common ones that you see in the world of websites, for instance?
Well, obviously, on a website, you're close to that moment of highest tension where someone's mouse is hovering over the book now or buy now button.
Yeah.
So to take it into like really granular terms, there's always those anxieties about, well, what happens next? Or what is required of me for this to be a successful relationship, if it's coaching or a program or a workshop, for example. There's, yeah, a lot of the time it's like, what's required of me and what are you going to do to help me? Also, how much of your time is available to me? If we're talking in the world of, B2Bs,
Yeah.
and workshops, service providers, a lot of those anxieties that come up are, are personal hesitations. So that could also be, a mindset issue. It could be like, well, I don't believe the thing that you're trying to teach me because I've heard X, Y, and Z from someone else and I already trust them. So why should I totally change my mindset to listen to you? And it's really about listening to those, inquiry emails that you get through, or comments on LinkedIn posts or Instagram posts that you have, and not just dismissing them as like, oh, like they're an idiot, like I have to explain myself for the 10th time. Well, if you're explaining yourself for the 10th time, probably means on your website you haven't answered that question very well. So rather than seeing it as a negative, use it as a positive. I have a note stock on my desktop that anytime I get an inquiry from someone, I'll write it down. I'll sort of copy and paste the email, or I'll like transcribe the voice note someone sent me. And if it comes up multiple times, I'll put it in a LinkedIn post, I'll add it to my website,
Right.
and you can, rather than seeing it as irritating, see it as fuel and opportunity for yourself
Right.
to address those obstacles and hesitations.
Yeah.
On your website, the closer you can recreate that experience that someone's going through before they're invested in you emotionally, also financially,
Yeah.
the more you can overcome those things, the more that you've got that nice fluid pipeline of people coming to you, because there's no floating question marks of, oh, well, I'm not quite sure what's required of me of this,
Right.
or I'm not sure how many hours you're going to give me, or what the email support looks like.
Mm.
So see that as an opportunity that you can go ahead and improve your marketing communications, whether on your website or elsewhere,
Yeah.
so that, yeah,
Yeah.
you're making that fluid pipeline faster, more efficient, so you're going to see more people coming out the other end, which will look like bookings, inquiries, and sales.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what people are after, isn't it? It's the end of the pipe. How do you manage that pipeline and ease people through it in a way? Firstly, to get them in one end, but also to convert them to the end point that you're looking for as well. So, maybe let's talk then about in terms of Alice Wright's copy in the business. What do you, in terms of who you help and how you help them? So what do your clients tend to look like, and what sort of engagements do you have with them?
So my clients are usually service providers rather than product based. I'm currently working a lot in the outdoors well-being sport spaces.
Right.
But generally the common struggles that they have are being able to communicate so it sounds honest and genuine to who they are or who their brand is, but without it sounding really salesy.
Right.
And I know it can sound, when you start to write with the end view, with your mindset on the fact that you might get a sale on the end of this, when people start typing, it just sounds like gimmicky, like a sort of 90s game show style voice.
Yeah.
And it's just what you naturally go into, because that's how we're conditioned to understand sales to an
Mm.
extent. So yeah, often it's sort of the voice that they're using, the things that they need to say in order to get people over the line, or even get them in the door, get them onto your website in the first place,
Right.
let alone get them to stick around. So what we usually do is we look at, as I said before, like that experience for your customer.
Right.
And what we'll do is we'll map the decision making process of an ideal customer.
Mm.
And it might get a bit more complex with multiple customers, but if we're just focusing on one, where are they now? What are they struggling with? What are their alternative solutions? Have they tried them before? What worked? What didn't? What's the tipping point where they've decided, like, flip a neck, I can't do this anymore, I need another solution? What does that look like? And trying to understand that from the customer in like the most visceral, emotive terms as possible,
Right.
so that when they're communicating it to you, you have this image in your head of what that looks like, what it feels like, the frustrations that they're going through. And then now your ideal customers started to consider you as a solution, then you need to start to think, okay, well, I need to introduce my product. What obstacles and hesitations are they going to have around the deliverables, about the time scale, about what's required of them, how long it's going to take to get the thing that I'm paying for.
Right.
Is there like an upsell that you're going to give me that's going to give me something else and more time with you? And mapping out that decision making process. And that really is the foundations for all of the website messaging, whether it's your homepage, your about page, your sales page. It's thinking about, it's inserting yourself into that experience and basically being a mirror, and holding that mirror up to your customers and saying, like, this is you, like,
Right.
you are here, you want to be here, and I'm going to be the facilitator to get you to achieve what you want to achieve. And I know, like, your podcast is about performance, and one of the things I was thinking about beforehand was, yeah, I'm helping my clients perform, but they're helping their clients perform,
Yeah.
because performance is all about reaching potential and, you know, improvement, whether it's social or professional or with your relationships, etc.
Yeah.
By communicating to your customers that you understand what that decision making process is and you totally, you know, feel for them, you're helping them reach their potential in the fact that they are going to be able to, you know, have a better life or improve their experience or their relationships or their success at work. Is about helping them reach their sort of peak performance as well.
Oh, that's amazing. And so will you, you know, one of the questions I've always had in my mind is when's the best time to engage someone who's doing these sort of copywriting and website services? You know, is it before you start and have anything? You've got nothing, you've got no web page, you've got nothing set up yet. But what happens if you have? You know, when's the best stage in the journey to get involved, or is there not a best stage?
For me, the most successful projects that I've worked on have been when my client already has a customer base.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with getting a copywriter when you're starting from scratch. Absolutely nothing wrong at all. But if it's going to be one or the other, I would say the best time is to already have a customer base and be happy with those people.
Right.
You know, likely they're going to be early adopters. They can see something in you. You might not be able to communicate that yet, but you have a good relationship with those people. Whether it's product based or service based, you want at least a small handful of people who really like what you do.
Right.
Because when we create a website and we don't have an existing business, our go-to is look at someone else who does the same thing as me.
Yeah.
They seem pretty successful. I'd like to be successful, so I'll do what they do to get there. And that often leads to messaging and copy that's repetitive. It's not very unique. It makes you start to feel sometimes a little bit beige because it's messages that your customers or your potential customers have seen multiple times. So it doesn't help you, it doesn't differentiate you.
Right.
Saying that, most of the clients that I've had, like the very first iteration of their website, they did all themselves. And when you're starting out and you have limited resources, it makes sense.
Yeah.
For example, like I designed my first, like did all my branding to start with, but I got to a certain level and I knew who my customers were. I had a better idea and feedback on what they needed. Then I got a professional brand designer to reshape it all with actual sort of data and research to back it up.
Right.
So to parallel that, when it comes to copywriting, often people will sort of imagine what their ideal customer is and what they look like, who they follow on Instagram, what TV programs they watch on Netflix, how many dogs they have, what they do at the weekends. And it's that those ideas are formed in your head.
Yep.
Or maybe you're having a conversation with someone else like, oh, who would we really like to work with? It works up until a point, and the point is when you have customers that you can actually ask these questions to.
Right.
Because then you can see, okay, I've asked these questions to understand what their decision-making process is. Let's compare their responses to what I currently say on my website.
Right.
Is that the same thing? If it's the same thing, you're a genius and well done.
Yeah.
If it's not the same, then it's fuel for you to adapt, tweak, change what you have on your website so that you are following that, mirroring that decision-making process for your customers. So as a very long answer to your question as to when you do hire a copywriter, the most effective results are going to come when you have real past customers to engage with, to ask those questions.
Yeah. So you're essentially, what you're doing is you're bypassing the assumption stage where you're assuming what those customers have, and you've actually got some proper data or some anecdotes and resource that says this is actually what's
Yeah.
driving. Yeah, no, that's great, because I think that a lot of time, one of the anxieties that I went through, I went from being employed for most of my career through to being self-employed, and sort of setting up the website and going on to social media more, and using LinkedIn at a different level, and podcasting. All of this as part of something I'd never done as an employed person. And so you asking yourself, when do I do this? Is it right for me? Am I making a mistake by starting off? By doing something myself. And I think on reflection, it's a lot about, you think that what you do first is going to be the be all and end all for where you go. And I think there are some key things that you can get right in the early stage to help you, but ultimately you can always pivot, you can always do something, you can always get expert opinion to redo what you've got already. And I think that's been a big lesson for me in this space. One of the bits I just noted down when we were talking earlier on, that because it hit home so much with me, is that sort of style of communication that comes across in your writing and the copy side of it. I'm certainly one who, when I'm communicating with somebody on a one-to-one basis or in a group, it's much more personable. It's much more chatty and humorous and things like that. But when I come to writing something down, I end up with the sort of the strategic big words. I'm coming up with all of these fancy terms because I think that's what people want to hear, or I think that's the best way that it's described. And are there any sort of things that people should be thinking about, or any traps that people fall into, anything that they can be doing to avoid communicating in a way that doesn't come across well to their potential clients or current clients?
So I would start by, if you're able to have conversations with your customers to validate this, that's fantastic. Think about how sophisticated they are in your industry. And I often use yoga teachers as an example for this, in that I do a lot, well, I try to do a lot of yoga. I say I do a lot of yoga. The intention's there. And when I first started yoga, there's all this talk of like Vipassana and asanas and all the really complicated Indian names for all of the positions, and
Right.
it's really confusing and alienating, and it you just want to be nice and relaxed and like just follow the instructor in a yoga class, and suddenly all these words come out at me where I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? I don't, what is Chaturanga or any of those terms, and it knocks people sideways. So think about what terminology your customers use, because there are so many people who say, oh, well, I am my ideal customer, so maybe I don't need to do that market research, or it gives me better insight into how I should sell X new product because I am my ideal customer.
Right.
It's more often than not, you're not your ideal customer because you created the business and the people who are buying from you didn't. So
Right.
you have such an in-depth, sophisticated understanding of what your product or service is. So the language and terminology that you use to describe it will be totally different from how your actual clients and customers describe it.
Right.
So if you can have conversations with your customers and clients, like record the conversation, transcribe it. This is a technique that I use for, I'd say, basically all of my web copy projects. Is I have interviews with my clients.
Right.
I record it, I transcribe it, and the language that they use, it fills up probably 40, if not more, % of the web copy that I write for my clients. Because I know the language is going to resonate with them because it's come out of their mouth.
Right. Yeah.
And there's no way of them knowing, like, that you've copied and pasted it. You can tell them in the interview that that might happen, but it's going to be anonymous. No one else is going to know. But it puts you on a perfect level playing field, sort of matching your way of speaking to how your customers understand your products and services, which often takes the sort of salesiness out of it. The other thing you can do is not just record what your customers are saying, but Paul, you literally just said, I'm way better in conversation with people. You can be really chatty and informal and have a rapport with the people on the end of Zoom or even in person. But when you start to put fingers on keyboard, like, all of that goes out the window.
Yeah.
So record a few of your sales calls, describe the deliverables, repeat back to them what you understand their problems to be and their desires to be, transcribe it and put it on your website.
Right.
It's as it's really as simple as that. I say it's really simple, but
well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's simple when that's your area of expertise and you're used to it. I think there's a couple of things I wrote down here. With one is about the terminology that you're using and using the language of your audience or your potential audience. And one of the things that came to mind was, if you're in an interview, one of the things you do, if somebody asks you about something, you repeat that back and make sure you use the same words in application for a job and things like that. You always say it's and ultimately what it is, it's taking off some cognitive load or some of that hesitation to go, do they even understand me in terms of what I'm asking in the first place? Before they even give me the answer, do they understand the question? Do they understand the context of the question? It's like, well, you've asked about my skills in managing people. My skills in managing people are and ultimately what you're doing is you're reducing that cognitive load from people, so that they can focus on the content, not on the, is this somebody who gets me side of it. So yeah, that really hits home for me in terms of making sure that is language and copy and conversation that is going to make your audience feel comfortable and address, again, going back to what you said at the start, address those potential hesitations that they've got. So, that's wonderful. And so, when it comes to engaging with you and writing that copy, does it tend to be sort of one-off pieces, a rejig of a website? Who would be coming to you with what sort of projects? Is it a single, an ongoing client relationship, or is it more of a project-based approach that you tend to do?
It's usually project based. So I've written like single landing pages or sales pages for clients, but then also have done like an entire website and multiple product descriptions. And then they also run events, and just making sure there's that sort of consistency and coherence, one with the voice and the messaging through it. But you're also thinking about that fluid journey of people from the first impression when they land on the homepage, or even a blog post that they found through Google or a referral, and making sure there's that nice journey from that first impression to whatever your end goal is. And sometimes it's a sale, sometimes it's just growing an email list.
Right.
But yeah, it's usually project based. Start off with that research and discovery phase where we understand what the decision making process is.
Yeah.
We look at what the goals are, and then we look at how to facilitate that journey for people and make sure that each page, each step, each banner section on a page is following that decision-making process. So we're removing all of those barriers and hesitations for people, and yeah, mirroring that experience, like we said before.
Oh, brilliant stuff. And so one of the things I love to ask my guests is around, because it's all about performance and helping people perform, and so much energy is put into what you do to help others perform at their best. What gets you performing at your best? What do you do? Who do you speak to? What are the things that get you at the top of your game?
I was very resistant to it at first, because I work from home. I have my dog for company and his farts, but that's about it. And I was very resistant to it at first because some people might say I'm quite a stubborn person, but finding other copywriters to chat with and peers who are either in copywriting or marketing, and just having a platform to talk about common struggles and challenges and support each other for finding new solutions.
Right.
That has been invaluable, and I feel so stupid for not throwing myself into it sooner in my entrepreneurial journey.
Right.
um I've found this network that's people all over the world, so you see so many different opportunities to collaborate,
Right.
and learn what inspires them, then they can pass that on to you.
Mm.
So yeah, there's a company called Copy Hackers that I absolutely adore, and they are really at the forefront of testing conversion copywriting, A/B testing, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. They basically invented the term conversion copywriting.
Right.
So yeah, I'm in like a sort of mentor program with them at the moment, which is really adding fuel to the fire, because you can see that these people have done it before. They've created incredible businesses. They invented a term that is now commonly used in marketing. So yeah, that's really inspiring. So yeah, they're called Copy Hackers,
Yeah.
and it's run by Joanna Weeb.
Okay.
And the two mentors that I would love to, just give a little shout out.
Yeah, go
So
for it.
Amy Posner and Summer Weiss have been really amazing in helping me in the last few months.
Right. Brilliant. And I think, one of those areas you talk about, going into something and being wary or hesitant, and we'll come back to that word quite a lot, really, of going into a professional network. Was that hesitancy because you thought you're going in direct competition with people, or was it maybe an imposter syndrome element, or what are some of the hesitations that hit home for you in those stages, and how did you overcome them?
Very early days, it was definitely competition.
Right.
It was a stubbornness of like, I don't need to chat to other people and I can do this just fine.
Yeah.
And then you work by yourself every day. My husband chats to people all day for his job, and
Right.
he comes home and he's like, I can just have some peace and quiet. And I'm like, I haven't spoken to anyone all day.
Right.
And that sort of imbalance, I think, might have had something that pushed me towards the just start chatting to people. And yeah, definitely the initial feeling of I need to be 100% professional. I must show no weakness. I have no problems. And actually, because this incredible community, we've got like a Slack channel, we have Zoom meetings every week or every fortnight. And people become quite vulnerable in there and share what is like they're really struggling with.
Right.
And then that just, I guess, gives you permission to be like, actually, I really need help with this marketing piece, or this like messaging for this new landing page I've got, or whatever it is. So yeah, stubbornness to start with. But yeah, it's really nice when everyone else is on that. There might be at different stages of their copywriting journey.
Yeah.
But we can all support each other in it, and as
think...
the podcast says, help each other perform better.
Exactly. I mean, it's such the power of the community side, isn't it? Of just giving you energy, giving you time, and giving you the confidence that maybe you're doing the right thing, or the visibility that actually there's some bits I should be doing a bit better, and let's focus on getting those right as well. And if you try to do it all yourself, you'll only ever get to a certain level. And I've seen the power of community as I've got into this space, and I think it's huge, underrepresented element of a lot of the groups that you can join. It might seem like a professional thing, but there's personal connections and the sheer energy that it gives you. So that's wonderful.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
And in terms of, if you had the opportunity to use your skill set and use your experience to help any individual or team or organization, who would you want that to be?
You know what? I'd love to work with Wim Hof.
Okay. The Iceman,
I'm a big cold water advocate.
right?
I live in Cornwall and we're like 5 minutes from the beach. So I try and get in for like a cold water swim twice a week. And, his own personal story about overcoming lots of things and using the cold to be able to facilitate that.
Right.
On a personal level, I find that really inspiring. But also on a professional level, he has loads of online courses which I know exactly how to sell. So that if there was one person that like a dream client, it would be Wim Hof.
Yeah. And so, because usually at this stage, I'll ask maybe to flip that question around and say, if you were to be able to spend some time, have a drink, have a meal with somebody so that you could be at your best, who would you want that to be? Is that Wim Hof again, or is is someone
It
else come
could
to mind?
be. It
Yeah.
could be. Um, hmm. There's a woman called Oana Leonte who's the marketing director for Puma, who has a podcast that I absolutely love. It's called Unmatched, and it's about how brands and businesses can be unmatched, about that differentiating factor.
Right.
And I find her conversations really insightful. So either her or Stephen Bartlett, because he ceases to amaze me with everything that's going on in his head, and
Yeah.
I hate that he's younger than me, and but I don't. He's incredible, and
Yeah.
I just feel like that it would be one of those conversations that you could just carry on for forever with everything that's in that man's head.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, some amazing people there. And I've been making notes as we go through, and I think there's plenty of people that we can tag in or give some links to as well, because some of the things around Wim Hof and some of those other podcasts, we'll make sure that the links are in there so that people can learn for themselves off the back of this. So if you were to give the audience any sort of key pointers, what's one thing that they should leave this podcast thinking about, considering when it comes to their copyright and their websites, etc.?
Talk to your customers,
Right.
whether it's in person, and you've got a little voice recording app on your phone, whether it's on Zoom and you video it and transcribe it, whether you have a post-purchase thank you survey. It just needs to be one question to say what brought you here. Collect all of that information, and on top of, as we said before, those like inquiry emails, those seemingly annoying messages that you get about tiny details that you think are insignificant, have somewhere where you can collect all of those things and use that as your fuel for your website, and see if you can put them in like a chronological order, logically what makes sense,
Right.
what people thinking about first, and you utilize that as sort of the narrative and the flow for your website.
Right.
Because as I said before, you're not coming up with all these ideas for your website yourself. Your customers are giving you that content, and that just takes so much of the hassle and the stress out of writing your website by just gathering all those little pieces of information and just copy and paste it.
Oh, brilliant stuff. So the advice from the copywriter is the copy and paste. But I think this maybe that's oversimplifying things somewhat, but amazing lessons that we can all learn there about just simply listening to our customers, overcoming and thinking about those hesitations, those stumbling blocks that they are thinking through, and the process of decision making that they're going through, and helping that to inform the structure of your websites and your copy, so that just you're taking that cognitive load off people and giving them the comfort and the confidence. I've been writing down a load of notes here because I've got a load of scribbles, and I've been inspired and to think about what I'm doing, to listen to my customers a lot more, and I hope my audience have been as well. So really enjoyed this conversation, and final question: if people want to find out more, where do they go to connect and find out more about Alice Writes Copy?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. My URL's a bit long-winded, so if you just type in Alice Brown Newquay, you should be able to find me, because that's where I live. I also have a kind of script, if you want to call it that you can use on these calls with customers if you want to get these insights.
Okay.
So if you just go to my website, which is alicewritescopy.com/HPP, then you can get it there, and it will give you a list of really thoughtful, considered, sort of not leading questions, but enough open-ended questions that you're going to get honest responses from people. That should be sort of the basis for your key website messages if you want to be writing emotionally intelligent copy that hooks your prospective customers in.
Brilliant. And thank you so much for that. I mean, that's such a great resource for any of our listeners to go to. And I'll make sure that all those links, we'll get your LinkedIn profile link in the show notes, as well as links to your website, etc. So people can just go down to those show notes, click on there, and get yourself involved, connect with Alice, and see where this copywriting journey takes you. So, I mean, so much to think about, so much value in this podcast in its own right, and I think there's so much more in those freebies that you're given and off the back of this, and the insights that you're giving for people. So, love what you're doing, and really inspired me to get thinking and to do something different. So, thank you so much for being on the show today, Alice Brown.
Thank you so much, Paul. See you soon.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.